What would I do if I were in hospice? A frequent guest of this show, who I always called my favorite congressman, was in hospice recently. Barney Frank died this month, but on the way out, he said, "I want to use my unfortunate situation to say something that I think is very important." He said, "The key to liberal democracy being able to come back is to get rid of the perception that we have allowed to grow that the entire Democratic Party is committed to a series of very drastic social reconstructions that go beyond the politically acceptable." And there, in one sentence, is the autopsy the Democrats have been so desperately searching for. It sounds a lot like what Obama said after he left office. The average American doesn't think we have to completely tear down the system and remake it. They just don't want to see crazy stuff.
Bill Maher just detonated a bombshell about the Democrats, and nothing he said before comes close. The razor-tongued comedian unleashed pure hell on his own party, torching their rampant hypocrisy, the kind that's bleeding supporters dry and sending them running. Maher didn't sugarcoat a syllable. It was ruthless, electric, and absolutely scorched earth. So, slam that subscribe button and let's dive.
New rule. The next time the Democrats need an autopsy, they have to hire an actual coroner, because he or she couldn't do worse than the gutless stiffs they have doing it now. You probably heard the party released their autopsy on the November 2024 loss last week, in May of 2026. Because the Democrats are like Don Corleone. They insist on hearing bad news immediately. Oh, nobody remembers the movie, huh? Oh, what a shame. What a shame. You ought to check it out. It's very good.
Maher kicks things off by zeroing in on the Democrats' recently released autopsy report on the 2024 election. And right away, something feels off. Think about it. This is a party absolutely desperate to reclaim power. Yet they're just now rolling out a post-mortem that should have landed no later than early 2025. That delay alone speaks volumes. By this point, a serious battle-ready party shouldn't still be diagnosing the wound. They should already be stitching it up and charging forward. The 2026 midterms are knocking at the door, and the 2028 presidential race isn't far behind. Every week spent on hindsight is a week stolen from strategy.
Well, I've spent a good part of my life trying to get straight answers out of politicians. And I gotta tell you, while they're in office, you kind of have to trick them. This statement from the administration: the president had the constitutional authority to direct the use of military force because he could reasonably determine that such use of force was in the national interest. That's too vague for you?
Totally vague.
Okay, because that's from Obama. And he's one of the good ones. But you know when politicians get super honest? When they're retiring, or even better, dying. And especially when they're dying politically. If you're at 4% in the polls, oh, goodbye bullshit, hello bullworth.
The clock is ticking, and Democrats are still hitting snooze. And that point hits hard. That's the memorable episode where Maher had to practically corner Adam Schiff just to drag out an honest answer about the necessity of the war in the Middle East. Schiff danced, dodged, and deflected until Maher's relentless pressure left him nowhere to hide. And that right there is the Democratic playbook in a nutshell. Truth only surfaces when their backs are fully against the wall, when the exits are blocked and the cameras are rolling. The Biden cognitive decline saga is the most glaring example of this. For months, arguably years, the warning signs were flashing red, plain for anyone with eyes to see. Yet the party circled the wagons, dismissed the concerns, and tried to convince voters nothing was wrong. They didn't acknowledge reality.
Make you talk? We can't get you to shut up then. I see it here all the time. Politicians who are intransigent partisans or lackey water carriers, and then they're out of office, and it's read my book where I say all the things I should have said but didn't during my 500 years in office.
Until it had already exploded in their faces. That's not leadership. That's damage control masquerading as honesty. Here's the bitter reality about politicians. Truth is a commodity they hoard until retirement. And even then, the motive is painfully transparent. Suddenly, the tell-all memoir appears, conveniently priced at $29.99, packed with revelations they sat on for decades. Let's call it what it is: monetized honesty. Because if you can summon the courage to spill the truth from the comfort of a book tour, you had that same courage while sitting in office. The microphone was there. The platform was there. Your constituents were there, trusting you, voting for you, believing in you. But the truth got buried under...
You know, maybe instead of asking, what would Jesus do? People should ask, what would I do if I were in hospice? A frequent guest of this show, who I always called my favorite congressman, was in hospice recently. Barney Frank died this month, but on the way out, he said, I want to use my unfortunate situation to say something that I think is very important. He said the key to liberal democracy being able to come back is to get rid of the perception that we have allowed to grow that the entire Democratic Party is committed to a series of very drastic social reconstructions that go beyond the politically acceptable. And there, in one sentence, is the autopsy the Democrats have been so desperately searching for.
Ambition, party loyalty, and self-preservation. Retirement doesn't suddenly grow a conscience. It just removes the consequences. And that distinction should outrage every single voter. And here's the thing, none of this is new. Independent observers, everyday voters, and honest commentators have been sounding this alarm for years, long before any official autopsy was commissioned. The Democrats didn't lose in 2024 because of some complex, mysterious political equation. They lost, critics argue, because they went too far into woke politics, pushing social ideas that felt so disconnected from ordinary American life that they became punchlines, literally laughable. Average Americans, not political analysts, not Ivy League strategists, could see it plain as day. You didn't need a focus group. You didn't need polling data. You didn't need a panel of experts.
It sounds a lot like what Obama said after he left office. The average American doesn't think we have to completely tear down the system and remake it. They just don't want to see crazy stuff. Is this really so hard a message for Democrats to say? There's a Democrat who's running for governor here in California now who's saying it, San Jose Mayor Matt Mahan. Yeah, because he's at 4% in the polls. Everybody has been calling me lately saying, you gotta have this guy on. He's the sensible Democrat we've been looking for. To which I tell them, one, this is a national show. It's not all about you and your life in California. Two, how did you get this number? And three, what's his plan to get the leaf blowers to shut the fuck up in the morning?
Burning 2 years assembling a glossy autopsy report to decode what was already written on the wall in bold letters. The diagnosis was obvious. The patient was warned repeatedly. They just refused to listen until the election night numbers made denial impossible. And here lies the ugliest truth of all. The Democrats parading themselves as sensible centrists may not be the genuine article. Look closer, and a troubling pattern emerges. These so-called moderates aren't necessarily experiencing a sincere ideological awakening. They're experiencing an electoral emergency. The pivot to centrism isn't conviction, it's camouflage. When the votes dry up and the polling numbers crater, suddenly everyone discovers their inner moderate. How convenient. Because the moment the political winds shift back in their favor, watch how quickly that centrist costume gets peeled off. Meanwhile, the mainstream Democratic establishment remains stubbornly, defiant.
But also, you're right, he does sound sensible. Because he's at 4%. That's when everybody's brave. If he got to 40%, would he still be saying, as he does say, we need Democratic leaders in California who are willing to say no to their friends? That would be the unions, the bureaucrats, the lawyers, the consultants, the regulators, and all the special interest friends who make living in this state such a frustrating, maddening experience.
Woke, digging their heels deeper into positions that have already cost them dearly at the ballot box, refusing to genuinely recalibrate or honestly self-reflect. They'd rather protect the ideology than win the electorate. And voters, sharp, tired, and increasingly fed up, are getting remarkably good at spotting the performance from the genuine article. Look no further than California for the perfect case study in democratic denial. The state is in a genuine, undeniable crisis, with crumbling infrastructure, skyrocketing costs of living, rampant homelessness, and an exodus of residents and businesses that once made it the envy of the nation. And how did California get here? The answer is uncomfortable but unavoidable. Decades of unchecked woke politics, suffocating taxation, and a bloated, self-serving bureaucracy drunk on its own power. Yet walk into any room of California's influential political class, and the silence is deafening. Nobody with real clout, real platforms, or real influence wants to connect those dots publicly. The truth remains convenient.
Democrats are still afraid of the mean girls who police their far-out fringe. Massachusetts Congressman Seth Moulton had a perfect score on LGBTQ issues from the Human Rights Campaign. But when he said, "I have 2 little girls. I don't want them getting run over on a playing field by a male or formerly male athlete," his own campaign manager quit. And the chair of the Salem Democratic City Committee, Liz Bratt, accused Moulton of being, quote, "what is known as a cooperator in Nazi times." Yeah, I think the word you're looking for, moron, is collaborator. And I'm guessing everything you know about Nazi times comes from TikTok. But imagine that. A congressman merely stands up for the liberal principle, the one we do still call Title IX, that women get an equal shot in sports. And now it gets you labeled a Nazi.